Actually, while people roll into the room, we'll go ahead and throw out our question of the day. Let's see. It's too early. Is it too early for pumpkin season? Yes or no? Julie?
I'm not a pumpkin season girl, so it doesn't matter to me when it comes or goes. I do not like anything flavored pumpkin or anything like that. So everybody could have at it.
Well, that's a very non-answer. Is it too early or not? I can have a yes
Uh,
or no.
it's never too
let me give it.
never too early.
Never too early. Okay.
So
What
I
about
have some
Will?
similar feel. Yeah, I got some similar feelings about pumpkin stuff, but Julie, with one exception, and that is pumpkin seeds. So when our kids carve pumpkins, we save and wash the seeds. My wife is pretty good at coming up with a few different flavor combinations to have some different roasted pumpkin seeds afterwards. I'll eat those all day long, but if it's regular pumpkin itself, no thanks. No
When we
thanks.
were just
I like
talking about
pumpkin
the
bread.
weather,
Yeah, true.
it just feels too warm yet to even like pumpkins are going to melt on the front porch, I think, right? Like
Right.
we've just
I agree.
been too warm.
Yeah, my wife's like, "Oh, it's pumpkin season." It is not pumpkin season as far as I'm concerned. So I'm very much on a not pumpkin season person here. So now the pumpkin seeds, I know that now we're getting way off topic, but the seeds, you roast them. Do you eat the whole thing or do you crack it open and eat the insides? I've never eaten pumpkin
No,
seeds.
you eat the whole thing. You eat the whole
Yeah.
Eat
thing.
the whole thing.
You eat the whole thing.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. But you put different spices, flavorings, and what have you on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, we might
Absolutely.
have to try that. All right. Well, now that we have determined that one of us is very adamant that it is not pumpkin season, and two of you basically gave me kind of a non-answer. Maybe it's pumpkin season, maybe it's not. I don't really care. So we'll leave it with that. So again, welcome to today's short webinar. This is just a short 30-minute webinar. Topic is and this is part of our practice management talks. The topic is communicating and shifting priorities. And it's presented by Will Hill. Thank you, Will, and Julie Smith. Thanks, Julie. Julie did write an article that's on Insightful Accountant. And once I go dark here, I'll drop the link to that article into the chat. And so we certainly appreciate that. It's around this general topic. So be a good follow up to this event. It was also a good read leading up to the event. But before I do turn it over, as I mentioned, it is just a 30-minute webinar, so there is no CPE. If you have any questions, put them in the Q&A, and they'll attempt to get to them when they can. And then you will receive a follow-up email to this that has the link to our YouTube channel, which is where we post almost all of our archive webinars. And then you'll also have a link to what's currently our box folder. That's probably going to change, but it'll have a link to our box folder where the presentation will sit as well. I don't know if I loaded poll questions. If I did, I'll come back at the end and have a couple of poll questions just to throw out there to kind of pick your brain a little bit. So other than that, I'm out. Will, thank you so much. Julie, thank you so much. I appreciate you guys taking some time out of your day to share your info here.
All right. Thank you, Gary. I appreciate it. Julie, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you too. I was just thinking about it and it feels like it's been more than 30 days since the last time I've seen you. I don't know if it's just been a really long duration in between or what's going on.
Might have something to do with 9:15 sitting in there. I don't know. Just taking a guess. Just taking a
Maybe.
guess. So, yeah. Hey, if you've been with us in the series, here's two slides you've seen before. One with me, a little bit about me. I'm here. I don't know, this really informal introduction. And then one with Julie. You've seen this. She's here. Always good to have her here as well. Our contact info will be on the last slide if you want to reach out to us. But I think we jump in. How do you feel about that, Julie?
Let's do it.
All right. So today we wanted to talk about shifting priorities, and I thought we would kind of break this conversation into four pieces. Do we have to? That's kind of the tone. I read it in one of my teenagers' tones right there. Do we have to? Talk about what does it mean? How do we communicate about it? And then something I want us to touch on, Julie, at the end is very rarely do people go do a debrief when they shift priorities and go, was that the right move to make or not the right move to make? So I want to make sure we spend some time there. It's how we'll drive our conversation today. As Gary mentioned, if you have a question, want to pop into the chat, we'll be keeping an eye on that. So feel free to do so. All right. So priority shifting, it happens. But if it doesn't happen for a good reason, you usually don't get good results. And I've been with a lot of firms, Julie, where we're shifting and moving things, and uh, I'm like, why are we doing that? I've been at others where we're not doing anything different. And I'm sitting here going, why aren't we shifting priority? Right. So that question come up. And I thought I'd throw up on the screen here just what are the clues that we need to priority shift? And so one, everything is urgent and emergent, which really it can't be. But if it is, then we need to shift priorities. Secondly, if you have too many partially finished jobs, we need to shift priorities. And third, if your team can't tell you today what the priority is after yesterday, we probably have some issues and we need to do some priority shift work in there. And I know that when you read those or hear those, your mind kind of goes, it sounds like there's a lack of clarity. But Julie, I think those two things are directly related of we don't have good clarity and it means we have to shift priorities at least in what we're communicating. Maybe in our head the priority hasn't changed, but clearly that hasn't gotten out of our head to the team at large. Go ahead and respond to that, Julie.
Yeah, well, I took a little walk here before we got online and I was just thinking about this. And it seems like, if you look in, with professional and personal lives, and not to go down a different rabbit hole here, but anytime in our personal life when something happens or something pops up, we are so quickly to kind of priority shift right then and there, right? We're almost, I feel like in personal lives, people are so easily adaptable and almost have awareness around some of that where you go into like the office, the professional world, and I feel like sometimes we overlook those things that are like constantly like knocking us on our shoulder, or, tapping us saying, hey, wait, like this isn't working, or why is it, why is everybody in fight or flight mode here in this office? Or, why are we getting these calls because these jobs aren't getting done? And too often it's just head down, keep going, keep going, keep going, instead of having that awareness around like, hey, wait, this keeps happening, or like I keep feeling this tug. Let's How do we make this shift and how do we change, right? And changing priorities and the evolution of change is hard. But I think when you start talking about that priority shift and those clues, you just got to kind of pivot, right? And for whatever reason, again, I could be wrong on this, but it feels like in our personal life, we quickly turn the corner and like, okay, yep, got to do that. Feels like professionally, you and I have been in firms and it's like they just keep running into the same corner. They're just, continue to do that and don't necessarily pay attention to those clues that are literally hitting them, right in the face.
Yeah, and I think that firms that haven't done a great job at outlining kind of their mission and vision
Mm-hmm.
struggle with this even more, right? Because if we haven't said, hey, what are we really trying to accomplish, then we don't have that measuring stick to put against the things that we're doing or the things that come up to us. And that's where all of a sudden everything becomes urgent and everything
Mm-hmm.
feels like an emergency and must be handled because we just don't have the measuring stick to go. We have to have a priority list A through Z. It, just because something's down in the priority doesn't mean that it shouldn't exist. It just means it's less of a priority. And we've got to put our effort and our focus where our top priorities are. And if we're not being clear with that, either everything's overtaking, and really one and two are related. When everything is urgent, you're going to end up with partially finished jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Left and right. And so we get into firms that wrestle with, hey, I don't know that our quality is that good. We're suffering with quality issues. When we start to dig in and look, if the people doing those items that are having quality issues have a broader set of roles and responsibilities, especially true in smaller firms where they're not just a business tax preparer or something like that, right? They've got multiple hats that they're wearing. It could really be a priority confusion issue, more so than a quality issue, Julie.
Absolutely. And I think, you talked about something that plagues small firms, and it's that invisible ink of the job description, right? That invisible ink of people kind of, again, it grows and grows and grows. And if no one is really there to kind of hone that in on what that is in those priorities, and again, that kind of comes from the top, right? Really setting, like you said, the vision, the mission, the core values. What are you trying to achieve? And not only what are the firm trying to achieve, but what is each individual person trying to achieve? What is their priority in this firm? And really setting that forth, because it's easy to get stuck in the weeds, as we all know, right? It's easy to get stuck way down on the priority list, because sometimes you can check those off the to-do list faster, right? And it feels really good to maybe close one loop. But what we really have to focus on is going back to exactly what you said, is what are we trying to achieve as a firm and as individuals here at the firm, and really making those lists and being able to work and then know the next day, like you said, number three, exactly what's going to happen. And people really work well in those environments when they know what is coming and they know that priority. I mean, even I work better in that environment. I'm sure you do too, Will.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So this brings us to the conversation of what does a priority shift mean? Um, had a very interesting conversation with someone who worked in the smallest, she led the smallest group or business function within the firm, and she knew it. And she's like, I'm always taking back seat. And just how we communicated around the priority shift played a great deal into her psyche, which is going to play into her effort, quite frankly, that she puts out. And if we don't communicate well about the priority shifts when she already knows she's in the smallest division, she's going to get frustrated. She's going to get less proactive. All the things that start to come with poor performance, not because she's a bad person, but because we're not communicating well about where the priorities shift. So I want to make sure that we think about priorities as a matter of up and down the ladder, not a matter of it does exist or it doesn't exist, right? And I also think that we've got to be more aware of deprioritization, right? And oftentimes that oftentimes when we put something up on the priority list, we don't have the conversation about what else is coming down the priority list. When we move something up a ladder, the ladder doesn't get wider magically to hold more, right? If I want to put this on the top rung of the ladder, whatever's on the top rung has got to come down, right? Does that mean everything comes down one? Does that mean that uh, the thing on the second to top rung comes down three spots? Like we've got to have that conversation. And when we don't, this might be on my next slide, so we might say it twice. When we don't, oftentimes the people on our teams, they assume a priority shift is additive in nature instead of replacement in nature. And now that's when we get the I'm overworked, I'm frustrated, and just kind of that follow through becomes very poor at that end. I'll let you respond to my latter slide here, Julie.
Yeah, no, I love your ladder slide. I think, Will, that also comes with, are you having the right people do the right things, right? So if someone's continuously having to move their priorities up, right? What can you maybe take out of their priorities that are down on that ladder, and what can you move around? And I think as firms, we've got to really look and hone in on how do we, we have our accountants, we have our CPAs, we have our bookkeepers, we have all these people, we built this team, small, large, it doesn't matter. How are we best utilizing them to get what we want? And when, especially when we're trying to shift these priorities up and down the ladder or whatever, is how can we get everything done? And it seems like sometimes the best case scenario is, one, like you said, communication, having the conversation with the person where you're maybe constantly maybe escalating some of those priorities. But okay, what's down on your list? What can I take off your plate today to make sure that this priority gets done? And I think having the conversation when you do, whether it's with your team or individually, I don't think it really matters, but having the conversation, because as soon as you start that conversation, now you've created awareness with your team and with each individual, and saying, like, I understand we've got a lot of, we're shifting these priorities. This is what we need done. However, how can I help you? How can we make sure top down, bottom up, we're getting everything done? And so, like you said, up and down the ladder, that awareness. And I think communication and transparency just really helps these priorities shift. I don't want to say seamlessly, but a lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah. I felt like that was a good time to change slides and talk about how do we have success in the communication. Um, I will start with this, not pictured on the slide, but implied, is firms where there is a greater amount of transparency have a greater degree of success, and they also tend to solicit more internal ideas from their team. If we're going to shift priorities and just do it and not talk about it, or we talk about it in a very veiled manner, we are not going to get a team that goes, hey, that makes sense. I'm in. I'm going to keep giving my effort. We're going to get teams that become skeptical, teams that say, I don't like this, as opposed to the greater transparency. Then I'm going, hey, I got another idea. What if we were to make this other shift? That would help accelerate us in a way forward. So transparency, which should be reflected through all of these, I think is very important. We got to talk about the why. I also think that we've got to make sure that they understand this is a business move, not a personal move. So uh, if I want to move something up Julie's priority list and move something else down, how do I communicate that in such a way that Julie doesn't take it personal? Some of that, when we tend, especially if we're holding on to things that we really enjoy doing well, that's kind of a subconscious recipient of this communication, is to take it personal. Sometimes we got to get in front of that. And it sounds remedial, but to say, hey, Julie, here's a business choice. You are more than your tasks, but I need these tasks to shift. Has nothing to do with your performance. It's what we're trying to achieve for the client. That's why I put the why on front. When we talk about the why, well, the it's business, not personal should become an easier and shorter part of that conversation. Third and fourth also go together. Timelines and agree on dates. Is this a permanent priority shift? Is it short term? And then what are the dates that we're expecting? If I'm giving someone a new priority, what's my expected completion date? If we give priority adjustments without talking about both broad timelines, hey, we're making a long-term adjustment to where your focus is, or hey, we need to make a short-term switch until the next deadline to get through this work. I need to have that portion, but then I need to give some dates as well. Here are the things that are coming up. Here's when they're due. Here's what the expectation is. We got to have that as we reprioritize, not a lot later. Point five, already explained a little bit of that. Like, hey, we have to talk about the deprioritized thing. And then, Julie, I think you talked about this sixth element here of just giving them support through reallocation of work, right? All right, we want to put this priority up, but it requires 20% more lift than the item that was already on the top. Where do we find that? How can we work with them through their other items and help find that space? I understand that every firm leader wants to go to their team and say, here's your new priority. You're a smart individual. That's why I hired you. You figure out what won't be able to get done. But we don't live in a world where that works with our team members. We have to give them support of the other deprioritized items, and then looking for other allocated resources to disperse things to if needed. I also think we have to communicate to the whole team, Julie. If we just communicate with one person about what their priority shift is, we have no idea how many other people are going to them for questions on what we've just deprioritized. Well, if we don't tell the rest of the team, we put that person in a very bad position. Either not do the priority I asked them to do because they're helping their team members, or to go, nope, sorry, Will told me I can't do that anymore. I have to focus on this. And the other team is left going, you're our point of contact. What are we supposed to do now? And they're frustrated. So we've got to share these things with the whole team. Again, back to my transparency piece that's there. And then we got to talk to clients. Like, a lot of times our priorities, English, it's coming any moment. A lot of times our prioritization conversations are happening because of client needs and due dates on deliverables. So if we're shifting those things, hey, what kind of expectations are we setting with clients? We can't just say their work is getting pushed down. Well, their work isn't due until November. It's September. We don't have to talk to the client. Well, what if we already told the client we'd have it in early October? Now I need to call the client and say, hey, want to let you know it's going to be mid-October, but you're in no danger. Our real due date is here. Here's the only things you have to do. We're on it. Don't worry. We're just resetting that expectation with you as time gets closer. So I just ran through 8 bullets in about 30 seconds, Julie.
I
But
know.
on those, give me a couple that stand out to you, Julie.
Yeah, and I'm going to kind of take a little bit of a different spin because you kind of talked about the individuals in the firm and changing their priorities. But what happens when, as a firm, we change our priority, right? So many firms are going to the advisory model, or really focusing on that relationship instead of being that compliance driven. And I think they're all the same. Exactly what you said is exactly the same. It's just getting everybody's buy-in. And it's funny because your team usually has those answers, but going to them and asking, right? Instead of sometimes telling them and saying, hey, listen, this has been really on my mind lately. I'm thinking of switching our priority from tax season, and I'm really thinking about making that relationship all year long and changing our client base. What are your thoughts on that? You've immediately empowered that teammate to have an opinion and that you value it. And once you start to have those conversations and you get those individual buy-ins, kind of how you talked about, now you've got the firm buy-in, and now you go to the firm and now you start rolling out those timelines. You've kind of soft sold exactly what you're going to do in those priorities that you're shifting to, and kind of empowered them by giving them their opinion. But now you're going to give them the timeline. Now you're going to roll out, maybe you're changing your vision and mission in this case, maybe you're changing the job description. So you're reallocating throughout that ladder, but you get your entire team on board, because next is those clients, like you said, and you start changing those client relationships. But you've got your team and you've been able to go through that. And, I think one of the things that I've learned going through firms, and I know you have, it's even sometimes empowering one person on the team, getting their opinion, getting their valued buy-in, and they're able to kind of market it to the rest of the team. And you, as a leader, maybe don't necessarily have to pull and push up that hill. But when you're reshifting, I think, priorities holistically in a firm, and it's happening right all the time. It's the exact same communication success that you went through. It's just, how do you do it? This one, maybe not top down, bottom up, but the width wise, maybe you're turning your ladder a little bit, because you got to get everybody coming in the same direction on that ladder, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And great point about knowing who your influencers are within the firm, right? I think there's your formal leaders in the firm that are at the manager level or whatnot, but then there's also the influencers, right? And it could be a subset within the managers. It could be somebody else that just seems to have sway. Being aware of that as you cascade information, I think is vitally important. So awesome. Now, oh,
The
evaluating
tough
results, like I
part.
mentioned. Yeah, I don't think we do this, and we don't do this very much, because once we've shifted priority, we go, well, the past is the past, and we got more work in front of us, and we just plow forward, right? But I think once, if we made a significant shift, when we've accomplished that new top priority, and accomplished could be interpreted differently, right? If it's, hey, there's a couple of clients where we need to move their work, or if it's a whole firm shift in how we're approaching our commercial strategy, right? So the word accomplished can be in, or finished, be used different ways. We have to look at, hey, did this accomplish what we set out to accomplish? Which, by the way, means that before we shift priorities, we need to understand, what are we trying to accomplish by shifting priorities, right? If we're just responding because the wind is blowing, we're going to have a tough time. But let's go back to the communication success. It starts with understanding why. So part of that why needs to be, what are we trying to achieve? What's the goal? And then let's just look, did we accomplish that goal? We switched priorities, because I want to tell the team if we did. I want to be very clear, because that encourages them to say, hey, if things shift and move, it's not failure. It's because we're trying to have success. I think we also have to ask ourselves, how could we have communicated better? I don't care how swimmingly well the transition of a priority shift goes, more than likely there is going to be something where like communication could have been better over here. And it's not like we need to take that from a punitive perspective. It's purely a learning perspective to go, hey, this is where we kind of fell apart in communication. Let's just get better next time. I think the other thing and the final thing is that when we've achieved kind of that top priority shift, something else now becomes the top priority. So what is it? And interestingly enough, I see a lot of firms that go, hey, we're going to make a transition. Let's go with your commercial strategy route there, Julie, in terms of getting into more advisory services. So they make a transition to a couple of those, and then they sit and don't do anything. And they go, oh, wait, we forgot to look at what's next. And so we don't capture the momentum of success from change priorities and go, hey, this accomplished what we're trying to have it accomplish for us. But that means there's a next step, something else that has to happen. And so we don't follow on quickly with what's next as we go through there. Your thoughts on evaluating results and kind of the debrief portion, if you will, Julie?
Yeah, no, I think you did great. I think the other thing is if you're doing something that's large, like I had talked about, celebrate your small wins. So say you get your first advice, whatever the case is, but as a firm, as a team in your staff meeting that week or whatever you do as a team, celebrate the small win because that helps keep the momentum, but it also helps with accountability, I think, inside of the firm because everybody's like, okay, we've done one, can we do two, right? That what's next mentality kind of stays fresh in their mind. And, I always think, you have to evaluate what you did well and what you can improve on, exactly what you talked about. Sometimes when you shift priorities, I think it's best to go to the person, sometimes that gets that hot priority, right? That you shifted it to and say, hey, listen, I realize, this was, we're really trying to do this. What could I have done better? And I think sometimes that even just that question to them, I think sometimes allows them to take some of those top priorities because they do feel valued. And, next time maybe you take their feedback and you've got to implement it then, right? If you're going to ask, you've normally got to do something with it. And I think, you would agree with that. So I think celebrate every win that you get because small or big, it's moving you in the direction and giving you the momentum that you need to get the result that you desire. And I think it's also going directly to the source and what can we do better? And if it's in the team environment, what can we do better next time? Like, let's all brainstorm because everybody's involved in it.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Great. That's a very empowering question and an honoring question to your team of what could I have done better. That's great. That's great. Oh, Julie, look at us right there, right by the top of the hour. Where did your contact stuff go, Julie? It's not
I
on
don't
there.
know.
What happened?
Well, you did the slideshow this time, so
I promise
don't
this to our
know.
audience. If you connect with me and say, "Hey, Will, get me in touch with Julie," I promise to get you in touch with Julie. I can do that. We talk regularly. It's not a problem. I'll have to make sure that's fixed for the next one. Gary, thanks for your time today.
You guys, he iced you out, Julie. I don't know. I may have to side with you now on the pumpkin issue. So that's a tough topic that you guys are talking about, and not tough from a conceptual topic, but it's very difficult, right, in implementation and getting the buy-in, I imagine, from stakeholders, especially if you're in a firm that has multiple people, multiple stakeholders, convincing them that, hey, we need to do this, or I'm sure it's difficult, but also, even if everybody knows they need to do it, committing to doing that has got to be the biggest hurdle, I would think. Is that what you guys run across?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge hurdle. But I also think, Will kind of alluded to this, it's the momentum of like maybe you do one, but how you continue down the path to be able, to continue to do that.
Right. Small things, knock them off and get the next one. All right. I did say I had one poll question, or I said a couple, but there's only one, and it's around our Be Insightful program, and that is our paid premium model, where we have content that is available only to members of this program. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about that, just click yes, we'll send you info. If you say no, we won't. You may see it promoted and advertised in other places, but basically it's an annual fee. We're about to have a monthly. And we'll have, as part of that, there's basically roughly 36 webinars a year that cover 9 different topics across the year that members get, as well as additional content that we post on the website. So I'll go ahead and close this down in a couple of seconds. 1, 2, and 3. Will, Julie, thank you both so much. Thank you everyone else who took some time here to have a learning moment, if you will. Julie, have a great trip home. Will, thank you for everything, but thank you both for everything, and we will see you both very soon. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thank you.